We're going to move into our first session, dynamics of creating circular systems, design, drivers, and impacts. And during this session, as all sessions, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat throughout the session. If you could @ the name of the person presenting, that's going to help us track. Oh, okay, thank you. It's going to help us track what questions have been asked and what questions have been answered. And if you are a presenter and you have a moment and are interested in trying to answer questions throughout, we do unfortunately never have enough time for questions. And so the more questions get answered within the chat during the presentation, we're not mad about it. We're going to go ahead and start with Jordan Roods from the Institute for Sustainable Futures, University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. He's a they're a PhD candidate conducting research on the governance of a new circular economy in Australia based on nutrient recovery. Jordan will be presenting on why circular economy's vision to regenerate nature needs earth-centered governance. I believe this is a pre-recorded presentation. Great. I think, does your sound need to be? Hang on for some tech. Oh, Sarah's still pinned, I think.
You want to mute yourself on that computer?
I do.
I'm a PhD candidate based at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney. In my presentation today, I'll be talking about what an earth-centered governance lens for nutrient circularity in our food system could look like. So my PhD sits within the Australian Research Council's Nutrients in a Circular Economy Research Hub, or NICE Hub for short. NICE Hub is an Australian research collaboration working together with organisations such as the Rich Earth Institute to explore ways to capture the nutrients contained in human urine for reuse in safe and effective fertilizers. Today, I'll give a brief overview of the circular economy and circular nutrient economy concepts for those unfamiliar. I'll then discuss what this idea of earth-centered governance means for a circular nutrient economy, as well as provide an example of what it could look like in practice. For some context to my research, the global misuse of natural resources is one of the main drivers of the triple planetary crisis, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The way that local and global communities respond to this multi-level crisis will therefore largely depend on how we alter our unsustainable production and consumption practices. The circular economy is a potential solution, offering ways to simultaneously address decarbonisation, biodiversity loss, public health issues, and food insecurity. A circular economy is a regenerative economic system to replace our take, make, dispose linear economy with a model that eliminates waste, designs products for longevity, and regenerates nature. Different sectors are nested under the circular economy concept, including a circular economy that applies to the food system. A circular food economy would be defined by strategies such as reducing food waste, reusing food byproducts, marketing healthier and localized diets, and important to the work done by the Rich Earth Institute and NICE Hub, recovering and recycling nutrients within the food system, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nutrient circularity is achieved by first reducing nutrient losses across the entire food value chain, and secondly, recovering nutrients from organic byproducts such as human urine for reuse in organic fertilizers and soil conditioners. This model presents a range of opportunities such as increasing food security, improving soil health, and reducing eutrophication caused by nutrient runoff, which results in large-scale fish kills. I believe that a circular nutrient economy offers a means through which we can achieve the third regenerative principle of the circular economy. Regeneration in this context means that nature would have the capacity to renew itself and reactivate ecological processes that have been harmed by human activities. Agricultural practices could be improved through the circular nutrient economy to promote soil fertility, nutrient cycling, and to improve ecological services, thereby allowing nature to recover from disturbances and rebuild its functions. In my PhD, I'm interested in how exactly we could, or indeed should, govern our food system through a circular nutrient economy. I use the term governance here in a broad sense to refer to the formal and informal rules we use to steer collective behavior in society towards a specific objective. More simply, it's the rules we make to live, work, and play together at every scale of human activity, as stated by Michelle Maloney of the Australian Earth Laws Alliance. Underlying these formal and informal governance approaches are the cultural value and belief systems in our food system, although it's clearly in the early stages of development, as evidenced by the collaborative work being conducted between the Rich Earth Institute and NiceHub. What most concerns me, however, is the direction this plan for nutrient circularity could take if our economic system continues to be premised on a cultural value and belief system of growth and extractivism. To bring humanity's environmental footprint back within planetary boundaries will require a downscaling of energy and material use, foremost in developed countries, which will require a downscaling of the economy. A reorientation of our values and goals is therefore required, from maximizing profits of private companies to maximizing planetary well-being. I believe Earth-centered governance offers guidance on how to achieve a circular nutrient economy that can genuinely regenerate nature. Earth-centered or ecocentric governance is an approach that prioritizes the well-being of the Earth and its ecosystems over human interests. While it recognizes that humans are an integral part of the Earth system, it emphasizes that we are only one species within a much larger interconnected planetary system. This governance model aims to create legal, economic, and social systems that respect, protect, and regenerate the Earth systems, rather than exploiting natural resources for short-term human gain. Key principles of Earth-centered governance include the recognition of the intrinsic value of the Earth community, including living and non-living beings, which shifts away from the perception that humans are separate from nature. Earth-centered governance also recognizes that decision-making should be guided first and foremost by environmental protection, so that the long-term sustainability of ecosystems is guaranteed. A key principle is also that governance is always informed by the laws of nature. What this means is that laws are founded on scientific criteria, such as ecological life cycles, biodiversity rates, and planetary boundaries. Earth-centered governance also emphasizes the value of Indigenous knowledge systems and cultural practices, recognizing that First Nations peoples around the world have governed their communities for thousands of years in harmony with nature, and that Western governance has much to learn from their value system, which is based on principles such as reciprocity and gratitude for country. Rights of nature laws are an Earth-centered governance approach that could be integrated into a circular nutrient economy. One prominent example of these kinds of laws includes the granting of legal personhood to ecosystems such as rivers and lakes. The granting of legal rights to non-human entities, it's not a foreign construct. We've been doing it for hundreds of years by granting legal personhood to corporations and ships for liability purposes. For a circular nutrient economy, the rights of soils and water bodies could be enshrined in law to ensure that human activities related to nutrient extraction, use, and recovery do not degrade these systems. For instance, ensuring that phosphorus recovery from wastewater and agricultural runoff is governed by laws that recognize the inherent rights of ecosystems to remain free from eutrophication. Legal personhood for nature and other earth laws could lead to stricter regulations preventing nutrient overloading in rivers and lakes. These legal frameworks could serve as a model for protecting water bodies from nutrient pollution under a circular nutrient economy. A critique of this approach is that it also opens the gates for interest groups to block rights of nature claims, especially in adversarial legal systems such as Australia and the United States. This happened in the United States in 2020, where the legal personhood that was granted to Lake Erie in Toledo, Ohio, was challenged and overturned by farmers who argued that the law was too vague and it would expose them to liability from nutrient runoff. Instances such as these raise the question that if we do give a river or a lake a voice, are we truly going to listen, or is it merely a symbolic gesture? To mitigate these challenges, it's therefore vital that rights of nature frameworks have well-defined legal rights and also include appointed guardians from communities that have a deep connection with the animal, plant, or ecosystem that has become a rights bearer under the law. These guardians would oversee the enforcement of these rights, such as the case in New Zealand in 2017, when the Wanganui River was the first river system in the world to be granted legal personhood. The voice of the Wanganui is represented by a representative from the government, and importantly, one member of the Wanganui iwi, which is the local Maori tribe they have a sacred and reciprocal relationship with the river. Embedding First Nations people's voices in the legal decision-making process is a fundamental and essential practice of earth-centered governance. So to conclude, the circular economy presents a promising framework for addressing the challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, particularly when applied to the food system in the form of a circular nutrient economy. By embracing earth-centered governance approaches, I believe that we can realign our governance systems to prioritize the health and regeneration of natural ecosystems. Rights of nature laws may offer a model to help reconsider how we govern nutrient flows in a way that closes loops, restores ecosystems, and respects the intrinsic value of nature. However, these earth-centered governance approaches will only work if they are first and foremost grounded in a cultural value and belief system that prioritizes the health of the broader Earth community over human development. So thanks for listening to my presentation. If you'd like to learn more about my research, please feel free to reach out over email or LinkedIn. And you can also learn more about the work we're doing in the NICE Hub at the website here. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Can you stop sharing? Great. Thank you so much, Jordan. I'm not sure if Jordan is here at the moment. The time difference of this summit makes attending from Australia quite a feat and an effort. But what a great segue from our keynote to keep those things in mind. I'm already starting to feel the bubble effect of being with these people in this room and in the Zoom world. And as we keep talking and we're hearing the benefits of this and the benefits of that, just like, how is this not already what is happening in the world? And something that is so beautiful about this summit and for all the panels that have been set up is we're going to hear details from all directions about how to progress this rest of the world, from the agriculture and the technology and a lot of the implementation and law and all those things. So let's keep on moving. Next up, we have Laura Carter. Laura is an associate professor in soil and environmental chemistry from the University of Leeds in the UK. She leads a research group interested in exploring the fate and effects of emerging contaminants in the environment following their inadvertent release. Laura is presenting on contaminant risks in an agricultural sanitation circular economy. As Julia gets set up with that video, I do want to mention that if you are trying to reach Rich Earth Institute from the Zoom world through the chat, please go ahead and direct message Julia. Because of how we're sharing here in person, I cannot look at the chat very easily. So if you have messages, direct those to Julia. Thank you so much. And without further ado, here we are.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to talk about some of the potential risks linked to contaminants in an agricultural sanitation circular economy and some of the work we've been doing at the University of Leeds in the UK. Now, to begin with, I think we can all agree that by viewing human waste as a resource rather than a burden, this really offers a promising pathway to address both climate and environmental challenges. And if we focus on water scarcity in particular, which is increasing due to climate change, the reuse of treated wastewater can really help reduce pressures on freshwater sources. Technologies such as wastewater recycling for irrigation, industrial use, and even potable resource reuse are being implemented in many parts of the world at the moment. And this is an example here on the left-hand side of this slide of a treated wastewater irrigation site that we're working on in Israel. To add to this, human waste contains valuable nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, which can be recovered, and these can be turned into fertilizer. And the picture to the right is another site that we're working on at the moment, but this is in the UK, where biosolids are routinely applied to meet fertilizer needs. However, one aspect which we argue needs due consideration is the potential risks posed by the presence of emerging contaminants in these resources destined for reuse. And just a quick introduction for those of you who are less familiar with the term emerging contaminants, and I'm pretty sure if you ask many different researchers, you'll get a slightly different definition. But I consider emerging contaminants to be, they're a group of pollutants that have the potential to impact negatively on humans and ecosystems, and this can occur even in trace quantities. They might be emerging in a sense that they are newly detected, or emerging in terms of their identified potential to cause an effect. So many pollutants that fall into this class are things such as UV filters, polyfluorinated compounds, which you may have heard of. These are considered or commonly known as forever chemicals. Now, emerging contaminants are ubiquitous contaminants in environmental media. They're found all across the globe, but importantly, they can be detected in treated wastewater and sludges. And my research in this broader area of emerging contaminants lies in understanding the risks posed by pharmaceuticals in particular. Again, these are ubiquitous pollutants, and they can include medicines, so over-the-counter medicines such as painkillers, all the way to prescribed hospital therapeutic agents such as anti-cancer drugs. And we also can't forget that this encompasses veterinary medicines as well, such as antibiotics and feed additives. So the inadvertent release of pharmaceutical residues into the environment, I think, is probably more commonly associated with wastewater discharge into rivers. This has widely been reported in the UK press at the moment. There are a couple of news articles here highlighting the scale of the problem. So there's wastewater discharge into Windermere, and there's been recent reports of high levels of pharmaceuticals detected in even some of the more sort of what you would consider remote or pristine areas. However, the research that we've been doing at Leeds has been able to establish that these biologically active chemicals are also present in agricultural systems following the reuse of treated wastewater and treated sludges. And this conceptual figure highlights really the circular nature of this problem. Here we have humans that are consuming pharmaceuticals for the treatment or prevention of disease. Now, these are eliminated, they're present in fecal sludge and in sewage, and following treatment, for example, in a municipal wastewater treatment facility, the treated sludges and the treated wastewaters can be used in agricultural systems where crops are grown, which are for human and animal consumption. And what's really important also to highlight in this figure is that the dashed line here indicates the reuse of untreated excreta. And this is a common practice in a number of countries with limited wastewater treatment infrastructure, yet the demand for nutrients and water is still high. Here, we would expect that the concentrations of these contaminants would be higher because they haven't been through the treatment processes. The figure also shows a much smaller reuse loop if we consider a farm setting and the use of veterinary antibiotics, because you can have the direct excretion onto soil and also the reuse of manure onto land, which means that these veterinary medicines are coming back into the agricultural system. Now, the problem with pharmaceuticals in particular is the fact that they have this retained biological potency. So when you're taking a drug, for example, you take it for a specific purpose. You're trying to elicit an effect. The pharmaceutical interacts with a receptor in your body, and you have that response. So if we take antibiotics, for example, they are taken to stop bacterial infections, and anti-epileptics are taken to regulate sodium channels in the brain. And these are just examples of the potency of the chemicals, but what's important is this potency is not lost when these chemicals enter the environment, and this then poses a risk to humans and ecosystem health through inadvertent exposure. So to summarize in terms of research and what we've established so far, these chemicals with this retained biological potency are present in agricultural systems, and following resource reuse, they have the potential to impact on soil and crop health as well as wider ecosystem and human health. Now, one of the aspects which we're working on in particular is looking at the potential for food chain transfer and the potential for human health implications of consuming this contaminated produce. And this is linked onto a series of work packages around looking at the contribution of agricultural systems and the environment in the proliferation and the dissemination of antimicrobial resistance. So just some of the most recent work which we've been undertaking at Leeds includes some trials to demonstrate the potential and the capacity of a plant to take up these pharmaceuticals that are present in soils. In this specific example here, we were able to detect the anti-anxiety benzodiazepine drug, so diazepam, and this was taken up into a crop. But then what we were also able to see was that the chemical was transformed in the plant. So it underwent in-plant metabolism, and it made a suite of other chemicals. So it wasn't just the parent compound that we were able to detect, we could detect a range of compounds too. So further work which we've done has also looked into the effects of these chemicals on soil and plant health. And these pictures highlight the various different toxicological responses, and this ranges from an inability of crops to set fruit, for example, all the way to sublethal effects on plant growth and development through influencing plant hormone concentrations. Now, in the UK, we focused on trying to understand what chemicals are present in soils following the application of biosolids to land, because this is a common practice. And whilst much more work is needed to really unpick this, to understand the associated risks, what is clear is that pharmaceuticals are present. However, this is just one class of chemicals that we're able to establish that were in the soils. This non-target screen here is just a summary of a range of different chemicals that were detected in farms that we sampled across the UK, and includes chemicals such as plasticizers and dyes, which were frequently detected. Now, our recent ES&T Water feature article specifically focused on the risks aligned to the development of antimicrobial resistance and the potential for the environment and agriculture to contribute towards really acting as sort of reservoirs and areas of transmission of the resistant genes, resistant bacteria, and the antimicrobial residues themselves. So we highlight the risks in this article, but we also share opportunities and the potential for mitigation. And in this paper, what we really advocate is to secure this sustainable circularity in sanitation agricultural systems. There are 4 overarching themes that we need to address. And these focus on regulation and policy, infrastructure, treatment and management, and implementation. What we really call for is this joined up thinking with existing water quality and agricultural directives, appropriate and long-term financial support where treatment is needed, and increased awareness and improved monitoring and assessment. Now, I don't have time to really go into this in much detail, but I'm happy to talk about it at a later date. But I wanted to highlight that when we're talking about mitigation and how we can deal with these potential risks, it's really important to consider the reuse loop size, and that future needs and actions are dependent on the context and the resource type and really the need for this resource. So if we take, for example, a small reuse loop, we advocate for prioritised efforts to address fecal pathogen exposure in informal and poorly managed settings, and the use of low-cost treatment and improving waste collection mechanisms and designing toilet systems in the first place to enable easy reuse. So I'd just like to thank you for listening and to acknowledge my research group, which has been driving this work forwards, and the collaborators on the paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you so much, Laura. One of the biggest questions that we get here at Rich Earth through our info ad and our phone message and whatnot is about pharmaceuticals. And so having, nope, let's not do that. Having this research being done and continuing to work on how to filter out these things, but to really be looking at the full picture is so essential. Up next, we have Lotte Kristoferitsch from EOOS, Social Design in Austria. Lotte is Managing Director of EOOS, which has been contributing to sustainable sanitation on multiple levels of engagement since 2011, and will be presenting A Decade of Innovation, EOOS's journey in designing urine-separating interfaces and future developments.
Thank you very much. I really loved Laura Carter's ask for toilet systems, which is something that we are designing. So I just wanted to make sure, Julia, shall I share my screen? Okay, great, no problem. I'll do that. So here we go. Sorry for the delay. Yeah, so for us, it's been over 10 years designing toilets. This is in a way how it started in 2011 when we were asked by Swiss EOOS to join the Reinvented Toilet Challenge project, which was the blue diversion toilet. Since then, and this is a large overview that was also surprising for us to see what we've been achieving in the past years. This is just a very graphical overview of what we've been working on, and the projects that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that I'm going to touch upon now. They all have in common that we are applying the urine trap technology, a technology that we have patented, and that we are able to integrate into flush toilets, dry toilets, sitting, squatting toilets, and made out of various materials. One of them being Safe, a toilet that we industrialized with the Swiss company Laufen. This is how it looks like. I'm very sure that most of you have seen it in the past. It does contribute a lot, and I don't have to explain this to all of you because you know way better about the benefits of separating urine at source. But this is an image that we always use to explain what this toilet does and what it contributes to. And the interesting thing, after a few years in the market, it is now being implemented in large projects. So this project here is the European Space Agency, where urine is being collected with Laufen Safe toilets and repurposed as a fertilizer with the Buna process that all of you are familiar, I'm sure, as well. Another project is an urban project in Vienna. It's a subsidized housing project where also urine diversion flush toilets are being implemented within the building. Urine is being collected and stabilized on site for either an application as a very basic fertilizer for the roof gardens that are not accessible to users. And on the other hand, it is available for pickup if there are any other process in the future that will be implemented in the city of Vienna. But it's really interesting seeing this first implementation in a housing project in Central Europe. What we contributed to this project is actually a measuring tank where we have the daily possibility to measure the input of the toilets to the holding tanks. So we hopefully will learn a lot about usage. A project that I presented in the past is an open design project where we worked with the Swiss NGO and Swiss Sandec together to develop a template that enables local craftspeople to produce concrete urine diverting squat pans. We implemented this in Nepal, in Chitwan in 2023. These are just a few images showing local people building the sports plan itself, but also the integration into the slab. How it looks inside the toilet booth. And as a next step, we're currently in the process of doing the same thing in Uganda. A German NGO called Welthungerhilfe has the lead in this project, but this is an image of the farmers being trained on how to use stabilized urine with their plants. Again, some images from the implementation. On the right, you see the urine holding tank. They connected it to a very nice dispenser, so you can divert it very hygienically into your vessel that you bring for collecting urine. And these are actually proud farmers that were very surprised that urine is actually competing with chemical fertilizer, something that they don't have access to in this specific region. Yeah, one last project that I'm going to very quickly touch upon is a project that we developed for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for an Indian application where we deal with high volumes of anal cleansing water, something that is a bit far off applications in the global north, but nevertheless, it is very important. So what you see here is the full system. It's a urine diverting vacuum toilet. The tower, this light blue and black tower that you see on the right side of the image is actually the vacuum component of the toilet. And what we do with the urine and the wash water in this project is actually a very simple treatment process. It's a cascading wetland. So those white buckets you see on the left side with the plants, this is actually the treatment for urine and anal cleansing water. This is a bit closer look into the system. So you see on the far left side the outlines of a toilet, which is able to divert urine from flush water. So this is the larger blue stream, while a very thin and reduced flush water in combination with feces is being diverted into the biodigester treatment. The system improves the existing biodigester performance because the anal cleansing water is diverted. And what we manage to provide at the end of the treatment process is actually a very easily or simply treated effluent that is safe to be repurposed as gardening water or household cleaning water. So we competed against ISO 3500 and also against an Indian standard, and we were able to demonstrate on two sides that this treatment process is actually improving the existing treatment. This is a very graphical, abstract image of the toilet in connection to the vacuum system. Those are images from the toilet installed in a prefabricated toilet booth. We did the field trials together with BITS Pilani and Indian University at the Goa campus. Yeah, this is a glimpse about what we've been working on in the past 2 years rather than the last 13 years. So please feel free to reach out if you have further questions about the work that we've been doing apart from this. Our latest project is called G2T Generation 2 Reinvented Toilet, where we contributed the vacuum toilet system. It's again a urine diverting toilet, and this is something that this project was led by Georgia Tech in the US, and it's currently being handed over for industrialization to Lixil. So also feel free to reach out to their team to learn more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lotte. And of course, for those who are here in person and when you come to the research center tomorrow evening, we do have a Laugh Save toilet installed that you can come and see and use. And it's great to see so many more being installed on bigger and bigger scales. And I don't know if anybody else was picturing when Lotte said that the urine was competing with synthetic fertilizer. It just instantly went to like superhero battle happening, and there was capes involved. And I don't know if anybody wants to make that little short clip, I would watch it. That's all I'm saying. Invitation. We're going to move along to Matilda Gunnarsson. Matilda is a research associate in the Water, Coasts and Ocean team at Stockholm Environment Institute headquarters in Sweden. She holds an a master's in science, there we go, in environmental and water engineering from Uppsala University and the Swedish University of Agriculture Sciences with focus on water and sanitation systems. Matilda will be presenting on estimating environmental and societal impacts from scaling up urine concentration technologies. Take it away, Matilda.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. So, yes. So the work I will present today is based on my master thesis that was written at SLU. And if you want to know more, you can take a look at a paper derived from that was written with Cecilia Lalander and Jennifer McConville at SLU. So what we tried to do was to assess pros and cons of different urine concentration technologies and to assess the level of implementation required for net benefits in Malmö in Sweden with a population of around 350,000 people. As you all know, most of the nutrients in what we excrete can be found in urine, but there's also a low concentration due to the high water content. So therefore, we want to concentrate the urine by either removing the liquid from it or by recovering nutrients. And we invested 3 different systems for urine concentration, including alkaline dehydration, nitrification distillation, and ion exchange coupled with fluid precipitation. And I will not go into further details on these technologies, but there's some presentations at this summit about some of the technologies. So what we did, we invested a future scenario in a new urban development called Seger Park in Malmö in Sweden, estimated to house around 2,000 people. The systems were assumed to be semi-centralized, and urine was assumed to be collected and treated within the residential area, and the rest of the black water in a centralized wastewater treatment plant. And we also assumed that the toilet use was a Lovian. Yes, and all the nitrogen and phosphorus products recovered from the systems and the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant were assumed to be applied on land. We used multi-criteria assessment to investigate the sustainability of these systems. While multi-criteria assessment does not provide a holistic picture of the sustainability performance, the results can guide scaling and optimization of these technologies. We based the categories for the assessment on Susanna's definition of sustainable sanitation, which should protect human health and the environment and be economically viable, socially acceptable, and technically and institutionally appropriate. However, the social and institutional category was excluded due to uncertainties related to the novelty of the technologies. We derived the assessment criteria from relevant SDGs, which is illustrated by the picture. So the criteria investigated were finally atrophying emissions, nutrient recovery, nitrogen and phosphorus only, energy demand, space efficiency, cost, working environment. Yes, and each criteria was based on criteria-specific indicators. So I will be presenting the results from this based on the specific objectives. So I'll start with the pros and cons of different systems, and then move on to the level of implementation required for net benefits in Malmö. So in comparison with the conventional systems, the main advantages is the increased nitrogen recovery. But however, energy consumption can increase, and we see this especially for one of the systems. And due to the small scale of this assumed implementation, it was assumed to be implemented in an area covering less than 1% of the total population in Malmö. We don't see any effect on the atrophying emissions from the wastewater treatment plant. And this is compared with the conventional system. And for the internal comparison between the technologies, where we use the conventional system as the baseline, all systems are quite space efficient based on our indicator. But as this is an additional treatment steps, it of course entails additional costs of the systems, and in particular for nitrification distillation, which had the highest costs. And all systems entail additional risks to workers, as it's also an additional treatment facility. Here you can see the performance matrix of this multi-criteria assessment. And yeah, so as I said before, the main advantage is the nitrogen recovery, where we see the 5 times higher recovery rate than for the conventional system. However, it should be mentioned that the recovery is based on potential maximal recovery, and a larger scale implementation could result in lower recovery. For energy in demand, the alkaline dehydration system stands out, and it requires quite a lot of energy to dry the urine. And here we see a need for system optimization to reduce the energy demand. All systems perform well according to our indicator for space efficiency. However, for decision makers, it is important to consider the local conditions and space available within a residential area when planning installation of these technologies. And this may vary between this area of implementation. So it will also have to depend on the local context. The cost estimates, I wouldn't look too closely on them because they are very rough and based on available data with varying details. But as we see that system optimization is likely to reduce the costs, and also that cost estimates for all technologies were based on production and service of one unit, and a larger scale implementation is likely to reduce the costs. And for nitrification distillation system in particular, we also see that system optimization using the distiller for more nitrification columns could both affect the space efficiency and the costs of these systems, as the distiller is the most costly component of this system. And yeah, and for the working environment, it's important to consider like additional risks and do a more in-depth risk assessment to ensure safety of this operating these systems. Yes, and we see that a wider implementation of urine diversion could reduce nitrogen emissions to the recipient, and we could reach a good performance in this based on our performance scale with approximately 30% of the wastewater. If approximately 30% of the wastewater in Malmö, if it came from urine concentration systems. And for the fertilizer demand, we see that the phosphorus demand in Malmö could be covered at a 90% recovery rate. Less than 35% of the urine in Malmö would be required to cover the fertilizer demand there, but at a 70% recovery rate, approximately 40% of the urine would be required. And for nitrogen, the fraction required to come from urine diversion systems are slightly higher, and would also depend on, of course, the recovery rate. So for a 70% recovery rate, approximately 60% of the urine produced in Malmö would be required to cover the fertilizer demand there. However, it should also be noted that Malmö is not self-sufficient and can be is a quite large city in Sweden, and therefore it could be an accumulation of nutrients in this city, and the results are likely not representative for areas with smaller population and larger production. So the main technical bottlenecks we see is the potential nitrogen losses due to nitrogen being more volatile than phosphorus. The energy use, especially of the alkaline dehydration systems, and the additional costs and risks of these systems, which would require more research and optimization. But at implementation levels of 20 to 30% of a city, we could significantly reduce the nitrogen emissions to surface water and the local demand for external fertilizer input. However, there is, of course, more research needed, and for instance, this study do not include the socio-institutional bottlenecks, such as lack of norm standards and installation know-hows. And there's a general need for a more in-depth analysis of the criteria investigated here and also additional criteria. But what we can say is that urine diversion can contribute to achieving 5 SDGs, namely SDG 6, 9, 11, 12, and 14, based on our assessment. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Matilda. If somebody not, okay, no, we're good. Okay, great, thank you so much. We have to balance so many complicating factors in this work, don't we? We are just getting set up for an in-person presentation here. And so we're gonna work on that technology for a second. But next up, we've got Nolan Grant, who is a junior environmental engineering student at the University of Vermont. This summer, Nolan was an intern with Brightwater Tools. He created a model to estimate residential water and sewer fees throughout the US. Nolan will be presenting on modeling US economic and environmental drivers. And just a reminder for folks out there to keep yourself muted when not presenting. All right, thanks so much. Here we are.
Shortly.
And we slowly back away from the screen.
Okay.
And then if this can become, I'm just gonna do that. What am I hearing?
So our wastewater system today is not working for many Americans. Only 4% of all wastewater treatment plants in the United States are capable of treating more waste than they're currently treating, while 15% are already above their designed capacity. And 81% of these are operating at their maximum capacity. This is a large issue, and the primary reason, or one of many reasons, is the way that our infrastructure was designed. It was designed for large-scale infrastructure in urban environments at a time where people believed that the solution to pollution was dilution. This means combining all waste sources together, treating them all together, and sending them all out into the same place. Not only is this water inefficient, it's also energy inefficient and nutrient inefficient. And there are a multitude of alternative systems that can actually produce beneficial products from waste. Here's one example of what one alternative system could look like, where gray water from, say, your sink or your shower can be recycled and reused throughout your home. Waste from your toilet can be treated and reused as gray water, while other waste can be composted or even digested to produce natural gas that could power your home. These alternative systems aren't new, and there's many different versions of them available, but they're not being implemented on a large scale in the US. And one of the major reasons for that is money. Most developers are not going to implement these alternative systems unless it costs less than their current sewage conventional systems. And in most cases, these alternative systems are much more expensive. And one of these reasons is that the US government is not investing in these alternative systems. Here's one example of federal funding. This is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that started in 1988. And as of 2014, they've invested over $100 billion in the wastewater industry. 96% of this money has gone towards funding large-scale public treatment infrastructure. Clearly, this infrastructure needs our money, but when over 25 years, this much money has been invested and still only 4% of our wastewater treatment plants can handle more waste, this is telling that there's a deeper issue at play that money isn't going to solve. And there's not just economic barriers to these alternative systems, there's also many social barriers. One of the more obvious ones being, Americans think waste is gross. They're apprehensive to have a system in their home that reuses water from their waste. And there's interesting data behind this. There was a paper published in 2015 where researchers asked Americans how willing they would be to try certified safe recycled drinking water from various sources. When asked how they would feel about drinking this certified safe recycled water that came from wastewater that had gone through at least tertiary treatment, which is one of the final steps in most major wastewater treatment plants, their willingness was a 4 out of 10. When asked how they would feel about drinking recycled tap water, their willingness was still only a 6 out of 10. This indicates to me that many Americans are skeptical of the effectiveness of their wastewater systems. And this is likely because most Americans are not well informed on their wastewater systems. I want people to think about this. Do you know the facility that treats the waste coming from your home? Do you know where that facility is sending the treated waste, or the quality of the treated waste that they're sending into your local community? I know I don't know the answer to these questions, and I'd hazard to guess that many of you don't either. And this is a large issue. When we have these facilities polluting our environments right under our noses, it creates large issues. And this data is hard to find. I struggled this summer to find this data, and that's why I shifted towards looking at the economics behind this system. If we can identify areas where these facilities have higher costs, that could indicate that these are the facilities that are struggling to meet the needs of their environments. So this summer, I researched many fees with the current system, One of the more important ones being sewer development fees. Sewer development fees are one-time fees paid by a building developer for connecting a property to a sewer that hasn't been previously connected. I researched these fees in the largest city by population in all 50 states and found that each city decides how these fees are scaled in their own ways. The most common way to scale these fees is by incoming tap water meter size. Here is all of the relevant data for the cities that use this tap water meter size for scaling. But I like to look at it on a single scale. I think that's much more helpful. So let's look at single family development fees. These are estimated development fees or connection fees across the 50 states that I researched, 50 cities that I researched. And you can see that these fees vary from a couple $100s to many $1,000s. But I really like to look at this data on a map. When we map this data, we can see some trends in different regions of the US. Here's that same data where green indicates lower fees and red indicates higher fees. And we can start to identify some regions. In this map, the American Southeast sticks out to me in particular. And we can look at other fees associated with wastewater infrastructure, specifically single-family sewer rates. So this is the estimated monthly sewer fee that a single-family home would see. And here we notice some other areas of the US that stick out. Sticks out to me is the Pacific Northwest, the Chesapeake Bay area, and some areas of New England. And when we identify these areas, we can start to ask ourselves, what might be the specific problems in these areas that are causing these higher fees? When I see this map and I see areas like the Pacific Northwest and the Chesapeake Bay, one issue sticks out to me, which is eutrophication caused by nutrient pollution. There are other issues too. Specifically in the American Southeast, we have hurricanes and floodings becoming more and more common. And in areas of the West, water scarcity is a large issue. And I chose to dive a little bit deeper into eutrophication. And I researched specifically in the Pacific Northwest in the Puget Sound region. And I found that the largest wastewater treatment plant in the state of Washington, the West Point Treatment Plant, which treats the majority of the waste coming from the Seattle metro area, has massive issues, specifically with nutrient pollution. I have a quote here from a senior attorney at Earth Justice, which is a nonprofit, environmentally focused law organization. And she says, quote, "Nutrient pollution from West Point is contributing to, if not outright causing, low dissolved oxygen levels in the Puget Sound." She continues to speak towards the permit that has been issued by the state. She says, "Yet this permit includes no effluent limits for nutrient pollution, contrary to specific requirements in the law." What she's saying here is that the treatment permit for the wastewater treatment plant does not include any limitations on effluent nutrient levels. This directly contradicts the EPA, which has very clear restrictions on outgoing nutrient levels for wastewater treatment plants. Now, we can talk about all these different issues and try to identify these trends. And what we find is that there's no one solution that fits every person. We need a multitude of different solutions. And really, that's what we're doing here today. We're all coming together, people with different backgrounds, different perspectives, and sharing our ideas, how we see it, and all dedicated to solving the same issue. And when we can come together, we can create unique solutions to problems in specific areas. And we can start to develop a system that doesn't leave anybody out, that has different systems for different areas that address specific problems. That's my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Nolan. Watching that just so much reminded me, seeing that pie chart at the beginning, oh my gosh, so much just reminded me of what Sarah was saying in the beginning during her keynote about how important this work is that we're doing now before it's a total full-blown crisis everywhere. And we're already seeing that this is going to be so needed as we keep moving through. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to here and narrate what I'm doing for everyone's benefit. So we have one more presentation in this session, and then we'll take a short break. Our final presentation, sorry, one more presentation and then questions and answers, and then we'll take a short break. So our final presentation is Dr. Roseanne Weilmaker. Dr. Roseanne is the project coordinator at EOOS Water Hub Innovation Lab in Switzerland. Roseanne is project lead for the Water Hub Toolbox on resource-oriented sanitation, which she is developing with her colleagues at the Water Hub. Dr. Weilmaker will be presenting on driver, strategy, and technology fact sheets for urine diversion and resource recovery. Here we go.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? I hope so. Great. So thank you for the introduction. I'm happy to be here at the annual summit to present our circular sanitation toolbox with you and tell you more about the guides that we're developing for source-separated and decentralized sanitation. Again, my name is Roseanne Weilmaker, and I'm the Water Hub coordinator at EOOS, the Swiss Federal Institute for Aquatic Science and Technology. I'm gonna just make this. Sorry about that. So a bit of background about the Water Hub and the origin of the project. The Water Hub works to accelerate knowledge generation and transfer from science to practice on the topic of innovative water management, with a focus on resource valorization from source-separated streams. And we do this by conducting research on source-separated urine, black water, and gray water in our Water Hub laboratory, which is located in the basement of this building, shown here, which is called the Nest building. Here, researchers test and demonstrate treatment technologies and recovery processes for water, nutrients, and organic energy. In addition to the physical laboratory or physical hub, the Water Hub is also an innovation platform. And we use the platform to exchange with stakeholders from the field and create and disseminate knowledge that helps bridge the gap between research and practice. It's under this platform that the circular sanitation toolbox is being developed. And it originated because we often would receive inquiries from external stakeholders looking for information about resource-oriented sanitation with questions like, what can we implement in our building or in our neighborhood here in Switzerland? And do you have examples of representative case studies where the systems have been implemented? And especially architects and planners were looking for information on how to include sanitation in their sustainable and green building designs. So that brings me to our target audience. We created the toolbox primarily for architects, urban planners, and urban systems engineers who are looking to understand why, how, and what can be implemented in context of the global north. However, we are also certain that the toolbox will be useful for policymakers, legislators, engineers, trade persons who are looking for simplified information about circular sanitation. So what is the toolbox? The toolbox is a portfolio of curated information and illustrations on resource-oriented sanitation that will help practitioners access and navigate the option space of strategies, technologies for resource-oriented sanitation. The toolbox provides decision support, it catalogs inspirational case studies, and it provides links to further information. What was really key for us designing the toolbox was that we wanted it to be easy to grasp and appealing to use, so not some kind of complicated, difficult document to navigate. So the tools, what is in the toolbox? The toolbox has three parts. First, it includes an introductory booklet that includes background information on resource-oriented sanitation and our urban wastewater management system. It explains how to navigate and use the toolbox, and it also includes supporting information for the toolbox. The next part are a stack of guides, and these are two-sided A4 guides, which provide summarized information on goals, strategies, and technologies for resource-oriented sanitation. And I'll go into these further in a minute, but it is important to note that they can function as either standalone documents or they can be used together to build a narrative. The last part of the toolbox is an online repository of links and further reading about case studies, service providers, reference documents, and more. But again, the bulk of the toolbox is really this middle section, so the guides. And I'll use the remainder of the presentation time to share some example guides, and especially relevant for the topic of urine and nutrient recovery. So the first set of guides that we have in the toolbox describe the goals that may prompt practitioners' interest in implementing resource-oriented sanitation. And we felt it was important to include this set of guides because often when we exchange with stakeholders and that want to do something innovative or green with their sanitation system, but they don't know what they want to do, and they also often have not defined why they want to do it. So we want to offer them, first, a way to create like their why, or to at least define their why. And so on the left, you can see a list of included goals in the toolbox. And the guide that is shown here is the guide for recover nutrients and organic matter. And you can also see that there are 3 sub-goals, which are produce fertilizer, produce soil amendment, produce animal feed. And the sub-goals should help the users understand that there are nuances in nutrient recovery. And likewise, we have these for each of the goals. You'll also see that we have these colorful icons on the page, and these are the link from the goal guides to the next set of guides. Which are the strategy guides. The strategy guides, they group information based on similarities in implementation and infrastructure needed for treatment of source-separated streams. So here, considerations for user interface, piping, conveyance, and treatment are explained, and illustrated examples of what this can look like are shown. For example, on this, the sheet shown here is the strategy urine diversion, and with an example of a high-tech building implementation with urine diversion flush toilets, the Lauf and Save, designed by EOOS, and a low-tech implementation of urine diversion dry toilets in mobile units in the top right corner. On the left of the slide, you'll see the list of strategies included in the toolbox. The strategies can be implemented on their own. So for example, you can implement urine diversion, but send all the other streams to sewer, or the strategies can be combined. So for example, urine diversion can be combined with dry sanitation and water reuse for gray water. On the back of these sheets, which I won't show today, we link the strategies further to the respective treatment technologies and output products, again, linking them to the next set of guides. The last set of guides are the technology guides, and the technology guides provide detailed information on the treatment processes, maintenance and operation requirements, and the target outputs per technology. So here on the slide, you see the guide for urine storage and pasteurization. In addition to the general process information shown on the right of the guide, we also include a representative case study on the front with an illustration of the technology, the specific treatment train at the bottom, the respective goals and implemented strategies are highlighted, and a short summary of the case study is also provided. On the back of the technology guides, we include 3 more representative case studies. So with the 4 case studies per sheet, we really aim to offer inspirational examples of how and where technologies have been implemented and what these look like. And you'll notice that we've included the Rich Earth Institute here as one of the cases for urine storage and pasteurization. I want to quickly point also to the list of technologies on the left, which was too long to include the entire list. But even so, you'll notice that the guides are either describe a single technology or a group of technologies. And we decided to group similar technologies in order to avoid repetition and to show comparison, like urine storage and pasteurization here. Or other guides group technologies because they have been successfully implemented in combination. So that's like this technology here, nitrification distillation, commonly known as the VUNA process. We've decided to group them together because it's often implemented together. Again, on this technology guide, you see the general information on the right, the one case study on the front, and then again on the back, 3 other representative case studies. And with this, I would like to conclude the presentation and our sneak peek for the circular sanitation toolbox. We are planning to release in the spring, and please scan the QR code. You can sign up for the release, and we look forward to answering any questions. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Roseanne. What an incredible toolbox resource oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. And then ending on that technology list, that's a nice segue into what we'll be talking about after the break. We have time, I think, for maybe 1 or 2 questions. And so first off,
that could be specific. So this is the first.
Okay, I think Jordan's not here.
That's what I meant. It could be a general question.
Great. From Maureen Legrand, circular economy I think anybody who wants to answer this question. Circular economy is massively understood as finding some economic value in waste or commodification of waste. How can we adopt another framework now? My question is here more precisely, recycling waste for the profit of whom? If anybody wants to answer that, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Let's see here. I'd like to make a comment. So that's a great question. And I'm Elisa. I'm working on container-based sanitation in East Africa. And one of the big problems with the circular economy argument and also the ability to pay argument, which some of my colleagues who are very successful at getting grant money don't want to talk about, is the tyranny of scale that people who are trying to lead any kind of nature-based solutions to the sanitation crisis and the water pollution crisis run into the fact that you cannot make a profit on waste right now, on any excreta recovery, and all the big CBS organizations are highly subsidized. So I do think at some point we have to address and push back on the idea of market-based solutions, and also on the defecatory justice angle. You know, toilet justice is environmental justice, and it's also multi-species justice. So when we start to quantify all the externalities to the environment, we need to have a new matrix for value creation, I think. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have time for 1 more. From Arthur Davis to Roseanne. Are you open to including any other new technologies into this toolbox before it goes live?
So we are finalizing the toolbox. We are including technologies that have already been implemented. So we have to have at least 4 case studies. And the idea of having the loose sheet, so the guides be separate pages, is that the toolbox can grow. So as technologies develop and are implemented, we can include them in the toolbox. But we want to be able to offer technologies that have been tested and implemented.
Amazing. Thank you to all presenters. Another round of applause for everyone who presented. And we will pause here for a break. And if you had a question, I'm encouraging the presenters to please check out the chat and see what questions are lingering, and try to answer them to the best of your ability. And I'm gonna go ahead and let the Zoom folks off for a break, and then I have a couple comments for the in-person people here. And Julia's gonna share the slideshow of your responses when you signed up about what excretory justice means to you. So Zoomers, you're on break for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 11:45.